You look very serious, Brent.
I always do.
You look very, very... Oh, now there's the smile. Here we are. We are in the parking lot of Portillo's, the one in Willowbrook. That's hockey player Brent Sopel. You may remember him from the team that won the freaking Stanley Cup in 2009.
That's a long time ago. You might not remember me, but...
Oh, no, we'll never forget. That was a drought ender. That was a big deal. But it's Car Con Carne, presented by the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston, 1015 Chicago Avenue. I've been driving a CX-9, a Mazda CX-9 lately. Super powerful ride, more torque than the Infiniti QX60 and Acura MDX. And this month, November, the Autobarn's offering financing as low as 1.9% for 60 months on select Mazda models, up to $2,000 customer cash. So before you hit the road for Thanksgiving, or maybe after Thanksgiving's over and you feel like you need a treat after dealing with the family, go to the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston. Brent Sopel, are you ready to eat sausage and talk hockey?
Let's do this.
Okay, let's do this.
It's Car Con Carne. Let's eat in the car. It's Car Con Carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Alstyne.
There's so much to cover with you. Let's start with the news. Was Coach Q scapegoated?
Coach Q will go down as... he'll be in the Illinois Hall of Fame. He's going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And what he did for the city, 3 Stanley Cups in 8 years. It's amazing. There's teams that, the St. Louis Blues have never won a Stanley Cup. And, obviously the Chicago Blackhawks fans know St. Louis. But, I feel awful. I think that Joel should have finished out the year and then, reassess what what ownership and management wanted to do from there. I think he deserved it. He owned it. But on that being said, I know the young kid Jeremy. Coming in. I feel terrible for him. He's coming into a tough situation at the ripe age of 33.
What was the thing you learned that had the greatest impact from Coach Q? Like, what stayed with you from playing on the Hawks?
The respect level that Joel had for everybody. Joel gave us our space. The dressing room was our place. He didn't come in there, but he can manage personalities better than any coach. I've started skating when I was 2. Played a lot of hockey. Had a lot of coaches, good and bad, but he could manage personalities. There's some guys where you have to pull them aside and just say, hey, I need more out of you, or I need this, and this, or some guys you had to get them in their face, and there's some guys you had to call out the media. But he could manage those personalities, and he got the most out of the players by doing that. And as you can see, obviously 3 Stanley Cups is no joke.
So it's hard to talk about your hockey career without talking about what's come to light recently. Dyslexia.
Yeah.
You've started a foundation, the Brent Sopel Foundation. This is a stunning number. 1 in 6 people have dyslexia.
Yeah.
That seems way higher than I ever would have imagined.
It's and that's crazy. I start talking to people. Every 1 in 2 people are going to get cancer. Well, next in line is dyslexia. It's staggering. The second point, it's hereditary. So it's not going anywhere. There's no cure that can be, we're born with it. That's the way we're wired. And you take a look at, your kids. If you got kids in a classroom, there's, between 20 and 30 kids in each classroom. Take 20% of those kids that have it. It is a staggering number, and nobody talks about it. I always use autism. Everybody knows what autism is, and I think it's 1 in 60 or 1 in 65. Compare that to the 1 in 5, the 1 in 6 of dyslexia. It's mind blowing, and people have no idea how debilitating dyslexia is.
And that's why I bring it up. I mean, I want to talk about the foundation, but specific to you as a hockey player, you didn't realize at your NHL peak that you had dyslexia, and it was something that it affected your self-perception, your self-esteem.
Oh yeah, and that is the biggest thing is self-esteem. My self-esteem on that side of the world. Obviously I played hockey, I won a Stanley Cup. That's a different view, but inside me, and that self-esteem of being able to be like everybody else and read a book and write emails really well and be able to sound words out. My self-esteem is very low when it comes to that, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I started this foundation, because I never want another kid to feel the way I do. And teachers call you stupid or lazy because you're not working and you can't get it, so they think that you're just messing around. And I had somebody reach out to me the other day, and his third grade teacher put him in the hallway all year long. So this poor kid sat in the hallway all year long because the teacher thought he was just messing around with was joking.
So it was undiagnosed, as it was for
Correct.
you for many years.
But so this guy's still scarred as I am going through that. So it's a long process to really get the word out there of what this is and the severity. And I think we were talking off air. The study that I read, that we figure about 50% of the prisoners in the world have dyslexia.
50%. So, talking about self-esteem and playing hockey, since you were diagnosed after you won the Cup, I mean, back then when you won the Stanley Cup, I mean, did you have those issues then? Because looking on the outside, it's like, holy shit, Brent Sopel, he'll defend anybody. He won the freaking Cup. That's how you felt under the uniform.
And I've learned a lot through my struggles, and ended up in rehab and getting sober. This world is not a friendly place. It's not easy.
See, and we're talking about so much here. It's a lot to unpack, because you just talked about sobriety. You became an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And was that, I've got to assume there was a cause and effect. The debilitating nature, the awful feelings of dyslexia led to you just kind of numbing yourself.
Yeah, like I was just saying, the world's not a friendly place, and we all go through something. We're all dealing with something, and I've learned that I'm not in anybody else's shoes but mine. Just like nobody's been in my shoes. And you talk about the prisoners and the alcoholics. You want to numb yourself, because when you're told you're only dumb and you're stupid for so long, guess what? You start believing that, and your days aren't happy. So you start drinking and you're doing drugs or whatever that is to escape that feeling. And like I said, I was drinking. I'm like, awesome. I felt good because I didn't have to think about that.
In season, you were.
Yeah, so I've been drinking for a long, long time, and obviously got really bad when hockey ended, because here I am trying to leave the game that I played for 40 years, my whole life.
It defined who you were publicly.
Yep. And because I didn't do well in school, because I probably haven't got an education past grade 8, because my stepmom did a lot of my homework, and teachers just passed me. When you can't read, it's pretty tough to pass any classes. So now here I'm entering the real world. No education, no college degree, no experience, and nobody's going to hire me. And I've had a lot of rejections in the last 3 years when it comes to work with all that. So you start drinking, getting away the pain, of all this. And when you're not drinking, or when you're drinking, you don't think of that. Obviously, you sober up, and then you start thinking about that. Guess what? Then you start thinking about it. So it was a vicious circle. I had some friends that stepped up and did an intervention, and put me in rehab, which
it was changed. One of those things where you suddenly walk in a room and
wow. just like the TV show, and had no idea it was coming, but it was the best thing for me. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them, because I was going down a very slippery slope, and I definitely wouldn't be here. I'm sober over 2 years, and
congratulations.
I appreciate that, and they saved my life, but I've learned a lot in these past 2 years, and scratching the surface on dyslexia. And like I said, it's everywhere, and I don't want another kid to feel the way I do.
Amazing. And we kind of touched on this, but you never realize the shit someone else is going through.
No, and that it took. I always just actually I was talking to a buddy of mine today. When somebody cuts you off, and I don't honk my horn very often at anybody. I don't know what they're going through. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're running to the hospital. I don't know if they're late. that's just me trying to put myself in somebody else's shoe. I'm not there. So, I've learned a lot through, I've had a lot of ups and downs. And, my fiance has been, the most amazing person in the world. And she's pulled me out of some dark days. And, if it wasn't for her, where I would be today, I don't know. I owe her my life, and it's some days I don't know how she puts up with me.
So going back to that Stanley Cup win, Kane scores the goal.
Yeah.
The entire city erupts. Philadelphia erupts in an angry way. People everywhere are blown away.
Yeah.
You weren't able to truly enjoy it.
It was a childhood dream, and I knew that was going to be my one and only shot to win it, and thank God that puck went in. I think if you watch the tape, I was the last guy to get off the bench because I was so afraid that puck didn't go in, and we continued playing and wouldn't end up winning. So I got on the ice really slow and wasn't going to celebrate until we find out. But at the end of the day, it was a childhood dream. We won it. That side of me was fulfilled. But there's a whole different side of me that has never been fulfilled for years and years.
This is tough to hear. I mean, I'm glad you're where you're at now, but this is tough. You've had a hell of a journey.
Yeah, I have, and I'm not. And the reason why, I'm being very candid with where I am today is because, like I said, I don't want another kid to feel the way I do. And when you talk about 20% of the population has dyslexia, I guarantee right now there's a kid laying in bed or, go walking to school, somewhere that doesn't want to be there, doesn't feel good about themselves, depression setting in, and it just, it sickens me. Like when I read that guy who's reached out to me that he sat outside in the hallway for his whole third grade class, just my heart, sunk, and it just made me sick. And I know I'm not the only one. This isn't a pity party for me. This has nothing to do with me. It's the future. It's those kids. And
it's your empathy for other people.
I've got kids, and at the end of the day, I don't care if Republican, Democrat. Everybody talks about that stuff. No, those kids are our future, and we're not taking care of them.
Well, and you you figured out that you had dyslexia because your daughter was diagnosed.
Correct. Yep.
And all of a sudden, as the symptoms are being checked off, the light bulb went on over your head like, oh my God.
And it's we don't know what the exact percentage of people find out the exact same way, but it's staggering. I've had, because it's hereditary, and that's what a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people in the same situation as me struggle. I talk to a lot of fathers and mothers, and they say the same thing, and they're like, well, didn't know, but we're going through the tests, and it was like, okay, there I am, that's me. And you get a little bit of a weight, lifted off your shoulder, meaning, okay, there was something there. I wasn't that dumb. That wasn't that stupid. But still, it doesn't take away from the scars of, all those years of childhood.
I get that. So we're watching, if you're watching on Facebook Live, that's Mike in the back seat.
Hello.
His mutual friend. He's hanging out in case people are wondering.
Yeah,
what's the
security guard?
Yeah, what's the dude with the Blackhawks hat doing back there?
And the Cubs, come on, put it away. Put it away. It's not baseball season.
That's right. And thank you, if you are watching, for not watching the Bears as this is going on. That's a noble sacrifice. We do appreciate it.
Football? The Hawks are playing, though.
How cold is it outside? I can't imagine.
Not cold.
Oh, dude, well, you're from Canada.
Yeah.
You're from, who am I talking to? All right, so we are going to stop the Facebook Live. This conversation will continue on Car Con Carne. You can get it on iTunes and Stitcher, carconcarne.com, Google Podcasts. But thank you for watching on Facebook Live. Watch for the podcast coming soon.
Thank you, guys.
Brent Sopel. You got to eat your sausage, too.
I'm going to dive right into it.
Italian sausages and being a really crappy host. So thank you for watching. Brent, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Did you just decide to drop anchor here? Like you were playing with Chicago and we just never left?
No, you got, I've got, I got kids, and, I was a suitcase in the NHL. I got traded quite a bit. I think I was on 7 teams. But as your kid get a little bit older, at some point in time, you gotta set up shop somewhere. And, talk about cold. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, up in God's country in Canada. In the wintertime where it gets minus 40 and minus 50, I'm like, not sure I want to handle that. So,
This is downright luxurious.
Like I said, I got a long sleeve T-shirt on right now. That's as high as I go. So, obviously, you can be in a lot worse places than here in Chicago. And our kids were settled with their friends and school. So, I got 2 left at home, and they're both in high school. So only have a few more years before they head off to college and spread their wings. And where will that be? We're not sure.
Have they gone the athletic route? Have they followed?
Nope.
Really? Is that rebellion?
No, it's I didn't want them to play hockey. I didn't want them. They would have always been compared to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now you look in the NHL.
I get that. Yeah.
You look in the NHL. There's some great prospects right now. Obviously Keith Tkachuk, who St. Louis battled against. He's got 2 boys in the NHL right now. So it can go both ways. But my kids saw me come home and bleeding and stitches and surgeries, and they just. It wasn't their cup of tea, and at the end of the day, I said that's fine. Just own the teams rather than play, so you don't end up with mush brain and concussions like myself, and all the stitches and all the surgeries.
Yeah. Well, what was the worst you ever got? The hardest you ever got hit? What was the?
What?
Was it just cumulative?
That I started playing hockey when I was 2, stayed in 2. Contact sport, I think we started when we were 10, so I've been playing, a physical sport since I was 10 years old. But when I was playing, nobody knew about concussions. I got in fights and woke up in the penalty box and got my bell rung and saw Tweety birds, and and it was no big deal because nobody knew what what it was.
Right.
Obviously it's a different story now, but the year that we won the Stanley Cup in 2010, right before the Olympic break, I ended up getting plantar fasciitis, and I basically had to.
Which is no fun if you're on skates.
It was one of the worst injuries. I ended up wearing a walking boot for, I want to say close to 6 or 8 weeks. So I'd have the walking boot on, going to the rink, play the game, shower, and get back in my walking boot. But I ended up having to take a pain injection for, I think it was 45 games in a row, from that Olympic break till we won the final game.
My God.
Just to get through with, with all the pain and injuries and block shots that I had.
And we're going to break here. It's halfway through the show. And again, Car Con Carne is presented by the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston, 1015 Chicago Avenue. I got my last 2 cars there. You should just go check them out. Take a test drive. If you got the big family ready to go for the holidays, go for the CX-9. I love that car. All right, back to Brent Sopel. That season, I was doing a lot of travel, and I was doing a lot of travel to Canada. I was doing a lot of radio consulting for Chorus and Astral up there, the 2 big radio companies. And that was the season, and that was when I was traveling. The second my cab driver would ask me, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Chicago." "Let's talk about the Blackhawks."
Yeah.
Hockey culture in Canada is so different. It's just a different world up there, up north.
Oh yeah, obviously. But the crazy thing is, so if you want to win a bet every single time, hockey is not Canada's national sport.
Is it curling?
It's lacrosse.
It's lacrosse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So anytime you're in a bar, you want to make quick $5. There you go. You'll get it every time.
Thank you.
In Canada, that it is. That's what everybody lives for and breathes. We've got like three TV stations now that are 100% sports, and everybody knows everything about hockey. But a 2010 team ranks as top 10 best team of all time. I think the NHL did a poll. It was last year, maybe last year, or year before, of all the best teams, and I think we ended up being top 10 of all time, which is we just passed 100 years in the NHL, which is pretty amazing. We had an amazing group of guys from start to finish.
What was it like when the parade happened?
It was.
What did that feel like?
Mind-blowing. Obviously we went to the United Center, we had pictures and stuff, and we all got on the buses, and we're all having a good time. We had no idea what we're walking into. Which
is great. I'm glad you didn't.
It was unbelievable. It was as far as you could see red, and I'm telling you, as high as you could see, people were hanging out their office buildings, and it was unbelievable. I don't know what that final count was. They're saying like 2 or 3 million people. It was, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. The people that are out there, the support. Obviously, it was a long drought. Just the way everything unfolded that year. To drive down the streets and see everybody out there was, it's still, like I said, mind blowing.
How did you feel when you had to leave the team? Was that tough?
It sucked.
Yeah.
You go back to late 70s. You got the Islanders who won 4 in a row, and early 80s. You got the Edmonton Oilers, and you can talk to. I'm sure Stan Bowman could tell you, or John McDonough, Rocky. You just want to stand the cup. You don't want to get rid of anybody.
Yeah.
But that's. And that's what this is. The game of hockey is a business in all 4 major sports. So, the salary cap is come in, and when you win, guys get paid. And there's a lot of us that left. And that next year, I was in Atlanta and Montreal, and that was my last stint in the NHL. So, there's no question. I didn't want to leave. None of us wanted to leave, but I can say, I want to stand this cup with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I left on as high a note as you can get.
What's the loudest place you played? Was it the United Center?
Mm-hmm.
You're not just saying that.
No, quite. Obviously, let's talk about. The jerseys get rated number 1. Every single year out of any sports jersey in the world. United Center. There's no other place where people cheer during the anthem. It's epic. There's nothing like it. So, you get on the ice during the Stanley Cup playoffs. I always like to sing whatever song where they were playing or whatever. That's just the way I calm my nerves. I couldn't hear myself talk.
That's amazing.
It's you can't replicate that. And again, that's another struggle of a professional athlete. Entering the real world, because where does that happen? You can't replicate the adrenaline and what was going on that every time we stepped on the ice.
So from the Hawks,
I got traded to Atlanta.
Right.
I think there's like 7 or 8 of us got traded to Atlanta, and then I got traded to the deadline to Montreal.
That's right.
Played in Montreal. We ended up losing to the Boston Bruins in the first round in Game 7 in overtime, and that was the year that the Boston won the Stanley Cup. And then I went to Russia for 3 years.
Right, you were exiled to Siberia.
Yeah.
Comrade.
That's exactly where the first team was for a year and a half, right in the dead center of Siberia.
It's...
My parents threaten it all the time. Hey, if you don't listen, I'm going to send you to Siberia.
Right.
They finally did.
Right.
They got their wish.
Mission accomplished.
Yep.
So, as someone who's retired from the sport, I'm assuming your days are filled with the foundation now.
Yeah, no, I've got a lot going on. Like I said, I've been rejected for a lot of time for the last 3 years with trying to get jobs, and Jimmy Bar, which is a protein bar company here based in Chicago, was finally the one company that gave me a chance and hired me, and so I've been doing a lot of work with Jimmy Bar, and trying to figure out the new world and the food service world and how to get in contact with people, along with my foundation, and then my fiance and all the kids. So it's my
a balance.
I'm a million times busier now than I ever was playing hockey. It's crazy. It's supposed to be vice versa, but it definitely isn't.
Well, also, you're filling your free time with productive stuff and family stuff as opposed to boozing.
Yeah, it's and the other one that I was telling somebody the other day is that since the day I was born, I was told where to be, when to be. Mm-hmm. So you go to school, you got to be at school, you got your classes, it ends, and you got finals, you got this. Then I was told when practice is, when the bus is, when the plane is, when the game is. So I've had a schedule for my whole life. So when I left the game of hockey, when that schedule wasn't there, I was lost. And
I believe it.
And it kind of, it sounds funny, but I needed that. I needed that schedule, and my schedule was drinking and trying to numb that pain and figure out where I'm going to go and how I'm going to do it. But guess what? Oh, I got rejected again. They're not going to hire me. Oh, you can only do commissions. So sell this chocolate bar and I'll give you 2 cents for every chocolate bar. it was just full of a ton of rejection for for a long time. Like I said before, the real world's not a friendly place, and that's where we got as people have to be better, more sympathetic, and how hard is it to say good morning or hold the door for somebody? You don't know what that person, or somebody's walking down the stairs or crossing the street struggling. Help them. You do not know what's going on in their life.
I totally agree, and it's funny. You kind of said this earlier. I'll be driving, and people will be tailgating. I think tailgating is the most obnoxious thing in the world. But I've reached a point where I'm like, whatever. You need to get somewhere more quickly than I do. I just don't care. I'm not. No. I'm going to end up where I'm going with a smile on my face. Yeah. You do what you got to do.
And before I'd be like, there's like times I've been hanging out the window and telling this guy off
or
and
tapping the brakes.
I'm almost wondering, tapping the brakes and brights, and I'd be one of those guys that you see on Facebook and road rage. But I've gotten to the point where like I don't know what they're, and everybody has something, and you're right. Like, are they late for work? Are they trying? Like, we don't know. Are they trying to get to the hospital? Is there something wrong? I don't know, and I'm finally able to understand that, and I wasn't before.
So over seven NHL teams, over 1,000 games. If you were to summarize your career without saying the Stanley Cup, how would you summarize your hockey career?
Obviously, pretty successful. I think the average length of career is 5 years. So, for me to play, 18 years pro and travel around the world, I'm grateful for everything that the game of hockey, gave me and allowed me to do and allowed me to see and be a part of.
Yeah, because you got to tour North America.
And then tour North America. Then when I was over in Russia, I think we were in out of 14 different countries. Sweden, Switzerland, and Kazakhstan, and Belarus, and Latvia. Just countries that you would never say, hey, if we're going to go on vacation, let's go here. So
places that most Americans couldn't find on a map.
Yeah. I know Eastern Europe, inside and out, and saw some amazing things, and cultures, and met some amazing people. So, the game of hockey's been wonderful to me.
So, going back to the Brent Sopel Foundation and dyslexia, now that we know how many people this affects, now that we know it's affected you to a near debilitating level, it's led to addiction. This stuff is serious. How can we help?
Obviously, you can go to the Brent Sopel Foundation. Right now we're doing a raffle, which will be drawn December 8th. And it's the grand prize is 4 tickets to the Winter Classic game in South Bend.
Oh, get out!
The Hawks against Boston. 2-night stay in the Thompson Hotel right downtown. A limo ride to the game and back, and a signed jersey for each team. So that's a grand prize.
Oh, that's badass.
The second prize is 2 tickets to the game with a signed jersey for each. So it's $50 for one ticket, $125, or you can get on there and obviously put some donations too. So. It's a lot of work. Nobody knows the magnitude of this, and we've talked about numbers here tonight, and they're staggering. And they really are. And like I said, there's kids that's suffering. I get emails and contacts, and again, also go my email if you have questions or concern. Please email me. I will get back to you. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get through some of the emails and responses, but I will get back to you. But please, obviously, donate if you can. Anything, $1 is better than nothing for us. And there's kids struggling, or you're a hockey fan. Pretty good value for something that could be actually a really good New Year's Day for you and your family, or some friends.
Oh, without a doubt.
Something like that.
So, for those of us beyond contributing money, I meet someone like you who I realize has trouble reading, who has dyslexia. How do I conduct myself? What can I do to help you? I mean, should I be calling instead of emailing? Should I be?
Yeah, it's obviously email. Email is obviously a great way to start. And
because I ask you this because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, don't really fully understand what dyslexia, the impact of dyslexia.
And that's right, and that's really why I started the foundation, because I always say I can't tell a cancer patient how you're going to feel during chemo. I don't know. I haven't been there, but with dyslexia, I can tell you my struggles and that my pit in my stomach every single day, that I have from it. But you've got questions or concerns, and email me. If it's something where we need to get on a call and talk. I was on a call a couple months ago with a family from New York. Their son played hockey, but was struggling with his left and rights, and the coaches didn't know how to do it. So got on a conference call with the family and the coaches, and got an email back from the father a couple weeks later thanking me and saying how amazing he is doing now. So sometimes it's as easy as that. Sometimes there's a lot more that goes into it, but I'm here for anybody and everybody. That's why I've started this. Is what I'm going to do. It's grassroots. It's touching one person at a time, and it's just starting that conversation. If you have it, or one of your kids have it, open the conversation up, with somebody else, or pass it to my website. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of people that are ashamed and don't want to talk about it, and that festers inside.
Sure.
And guess what? When is that going to come out? We don't know. And is it going to come out in a positive way? Absolutely not. So there's a lot more. Everybody's talking about mental health. I'll tell you right now, when you say 50% of the prisoners in the world have dyslexia, everybody's talking about depression. We were born with this. So, when you're one, you start to walk and you're starting to learn words. I guess, you start getting your books in 2, 3 in preschool and kindergarten. Guess what? You don't have depression then, right? But you're already noticing, why can my friend read?
Sure.
Why can't I get that? Why does my brother and sister, get this better than I do? That's already starting to register, at that age. So then you get into grade 1 and grade 2 and you keep struggling, and the teachers say you're dumb and you're lazy. Guess what? That's when the depression starts kicking in. So, dyslexia is, we're putting the horse before the cart, is where a ton of this starts. And there's so many poor kids that, end up committing suicide from depression. And I'll tell you right now, when you talk about the staggering numbers, 20% of the world have this. There's a lot of them that end up, doing things that we all wish we, never did. Mm-hmm. It's because we didn't get to him. We weren't able to have a conversation. We weren't able to find out where he's at, and that self-esteem. How do we fix it, and how do we, get him out of the position, in his head where he is today?
I think you're doing great work, and I'm inspired by what you've done. I mean, you're a tough SOB.
No, well, I appreciate you.
You're tough on the ice. You're tough on the ice, but coming through addiction and and like I said, my fiance's been absolutely amazing. If it wasn't for those guys that put me in rehab, I wouldn't be here today. So, I've had I've had an amazing support system. Obviously, like I said, my fiance's pulled me out of some dark days. She's been the most amazing woman in the world. But here I am starting the Brent Sopel Foundation. Guess what? You're not alone. Right. I am here to support you. Send me that email. You are not alone. I will get back to you. Like I said, if I got to have a phone call with you, wherever you are, North America, I am here. You're not alone. And that's my biggest message. You're not alone. I had an amazing support system, but you do too now, because I am there, and I have some absolutely amazing board members that are doing some great things, and we're trying to do a lot of great things to get out there. But you're not alone, so please, know that. I feel like I want to hug you. Brent, thank you so much for doing this. And please, eat your...
I appreciate the Portillos, and I am going to
You're an
fire
athlete.
this down.
I feel like you need to constantly be eating food just to stay upright.
I'm fat and washed up and overweight, so...
Dude, you look like you're 30 years old and ready to hit the ice tonight.
All right, how much do I have to pay you for that comment?
It's true. But anyways, thank you, dude. Really appreciate
thank you.
You and all the work you're doing.
Thank you very much.